Okay, I'm joined in our festival studio, arranged here outside of the workshops by Grant Harris, facilitator in systematic inventive thinking, and the leader of the workshops, creative thinking workshops in Warsaw.
Yeah.
Hello
Hi.
to you.
Nice to be here. Hi.
Grant, frankly, tell me, is it possible to teach somebody creative thinking?
Okay, so we believe yes, and we work with supposedly creative people from advertising agencies all over the world, different levels of experience. And no matter on the level of experience, and no matter how long they've been working in the industry, we see that when people start to work with techniques or method that we're teaching them, these are thinking tools, that we see that they're able to get to ideas that surprise themselves. They're able to get to...
I'm just wondering how you judge it. How do you judge it to see that actually what you do, what you teach, brings results?
Okay, so we work in it's actually through doing. So the way we tend to work is we would teach someone a little bit of a method, and just a little bit about these methods. The methods come, we've analyzed a lot of creative advertising, so we're effectively looking at the world of what they're doing. The people like them in the world are creating creative advertising all the time, and we've managed to categorize it, deconstruct it, and then in a way teach back to them things that they're using often without thinking too much about it, just intuitively. And one of the things that we allow them to do is to come up with ideas on demand. So it's a classic idea. I'm working on a brief and I've got stuck. We'd say, right, let's apply a tool. So one of the tools might be something we taught in this workshop, extreme consequence. Okay, so we're getting people...
Could you come up with some examples of techniques that you're teaching?
Okay, so one of the most common techniques, or we call them patterns, that we see in creative advertising is a technique called extreme consequence. It's very well known because we teach it all around the world.
Sounds terrible, that's for creative people.
Right, and once they realize that, first of all, we get them to see a lot of ads which are using this technique. So they think, okay, yeah, I recognize that. It's something that either I've seen or I've done. And then we would get them to understand the logic, that there's a logic behind this creative idea, and once they understand the logic, they can then activate that logic at will. So when I understand that what I'm seeing is because of an exaggerated consequence of using the product, okay, that's interesting. So I can take my my brief, and if I can do the steps, think of the consequences, what could happen as a result, what's the if I exaggerate that, where do I get to? All of a sudden, I'm giving them a pathway to generate ideas quite quickly. And the proof is in the pudding. So when we run the exercise, we give people notoriously short amounts of time, and we see that after maybe 5 minutes of working, they've managed to come up 3 or 4 directions. And often the comment I hear is, wow, we managed to do in a few minutes what it can take me sometimes a week to do. And it's not simple how, but we allow them to focus their mind in a certain direction. So without thinking of anything...
It's a bit like copying a pattern that you give them. At least it sounds to me to be like...
People sometimes say, well, it's a formula and we don't work according to formulas. It's a little bit understanding the behind the scenes of how an idea might work. So it's a little bit like imitating a pattern, but sometimes people say, well, I'm not going to get to something original. And the beauty is you're always going to get to something original, because the tool is like a ladder. It takes you in a certain direction so far. It gets you to a fairly good idea, and then gets you there quickly, so you have more time to think about how you can develop that into a beautiful execution, into a great, you can develop the twist. But the tools themselves are based on bringing to a good place quite quickly. The idea was to say to people, when you're coming up with a great ad idea, there's kind of there's at least 2 approaches to get to a great idea. One is through employing a kind of creativity pattern, and that focuses on how we can get to a more interesting advertising idea. The other is to say, how can we use insights, some insight about the customer, the way they're using the product, the brand. How can that inspire us to get to a better ad? And by giving people access to both those pathways, they can direct them quicker to more interesting, more creative communication idea. So the people, So
right. You're doing these workshops around the world, I believe, that
we're working with
different countries.
Yeah, we're working with agencies in America, in South America, in Europe, in the Far East.
Anything specific about this particular group that is the people that you work with in Poland? That is, have you noticed anything that surprised you?
That's a difficult question. First thing, that they're very nice and they're very responsive. That's, for me as a facilitator, always very important. That people are open-minded. That the worst thing you can possibly have is a kind of the defenses go down and people say, there's nothing I can learn more about creativity, or I don't follow formulas. So I'm finding that there can be a resistance. It can be a resistance to what we're teaching, but people here are very receptive and open-minded, and I think they're willing to learn and to accept that. So some of the comments that I'm hearing is, thank you for ordering. You've shown me a structured way of ordering things that I already know.
One of the basic principles of the creative session of CIT is first ideas are just first ideas.
People have a big smile on their face after 1 minute, and they're sitting and saying, why aren't you working? Because they say, I've got the idea. And one of the things that we force them to do is to say, great, put that idea aside. Now I want you to come up with another 10 in the next 2 minutes. We give them a constraint of time. And first ideas are often the great ideas are certainly not the first ideas. And by forcing them to work in a structured way and to develop lots of ideas quickly, we're giving someone the ability to actually have a wider range of choice, to say, actually, you're right. I'm not satisfied with the first idea, and the ones coming up with good ideas takes time and patience. And one of the things I do notice is that creatives tend to be a fairly impatient bunch of people. They expect the idea to come in a flash of inspiration. So one of the challenges when we work with groups, any group around the world, is getting people to be more methodical, getting people to explore lots of options. And the structured, systematic approach is a kind of discipline. And we say sometimes in our workshops, people will not have, it's not the aim that they have fun, it's that they often come out with a sore head, because we're getting them to change the way that they're used to thinking. We're getting to think in a different way. That can be a little bit uncomfortable sometimes.
Right. Good luck with the rest of your work.
Thank you very much.
Grant Harris, thank you very much.
Thanks a lot for the time. Thanks.